G'day Reefers, I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Welcome to Aquatica TV. Today we're here at Jelly Reef. We're going to be looking at this cool little nano tank and using it as an example as to show you exactly how to look after and service your small reef aquarium. We have been to Jelly Reef about 12 to 18 months ago and we did a video on exactly how to repair a scratch on your aquarium. It's definitely worth having a look at the video and we'll put a link to it in the comments. But to see the progress from that video to this video is quite interesting. Now, Jelly Reef is basically a soft coral zoa with a little bit of LPS, and there are a couple of SPS corals in here. And it's run with a Hydra 32. We've got a skimmer and a Vectra return pump underneath. We'll have a look at that in a sec. But we want to show you the sorts of things that we do when we're looking after a small reef tank. And it is a little bit different to what we do with the bigger reef tank. But one thing that is the same is that we always start by testing the water. So we'll grab our test kit and we'll test the water on Jelly Reef. When we test the water of a reef aquarium, we look at a number of parameters and we always record them so we can see how these parameters change over time. So on our Aquatica parameter log sheet, we have the salinity or the specific gravity as the first parameter that we check. We also look at the nutrients, so nitrate and phosphate. We look at the pH and the three most important for reef tanks, the KH, calcium and magnesium. Now we always record these so that we can see how the tank is tracking. Today we're going to use our spin tester to test these parameters and our refractometer for the salinity. So we'll take our sample and we'll put it through the spin tester. The spin tester takes a few minutes to give us a reading, and whilst it's spinning, we will test the salinity of the tank. Now, I probably should say specific gravity because we look at the specific gravity and use that as our reading. Now, let's see. So we have quite a high reading and it's actually come in at 1.028. And so that's something we'll need to keep in mind when we're looking at the other results. We'll probably dilute that back a little bit and use a little bit of RO water when we do the water change, but we'll look at that in a few minutes. So our spin tester is almost ready. Let's see what the other results are. So we have our results and we'll just run through them. The first one, the ALK, has come in at 117 ppm. Now we can convert that to degrees of carbonate hardness and it comes in at 6.5. Now that's a little bit on the low side. Last time it was at 7.3, which is a bit closer to what we were aiming for. We typically aim for about 8. The pH is 7.9. which is a bit low. This tank normally runs a bit higher, normally around about 8.1. The phosphate is 0.3. Now, 0.3 is not great, but for this tank, it's okay. The corals are typically, or are mainly, soft corals, and 0.3 is not too much of a problem for them. The nitrate is high for this tank. It's come in at 26. Now, the previous readings that we've taken have been single digits, which I would consider good for this tank. 959 are the last ones. So 26 is a little bit high, but we're going to dilute that with our water change. The calcium is coming at 502. Now that is a little bit high. The last reading was 485. So the calcium has been a bit high with this tank, and we may look at reducing the amount of calcium going into it. The magnesium is 1416. So also a little bit high, but it's better to have a high magnesium when your calcium is also high to keep the ratio pretty good. Overall, the results are okay, but we're here today to do a water change, and the water change is going to make a big difference to help to stabilize these parameters. So let's look at how we do a water change on Jelly Reef. Before we start to take water out of this tank, we need to think about the equipment in it to ensure that everything that needs to be turned off is turned off. Now, the first thing is the wave maker. We have a Nero 3 wave maker on this tank, and we're going to take the water level down to around about where the Nero sits. So we will turn the Nero off. Now we'll need to turn some things off underneath the tank. So let's have a look under the tank in the sump and see what equipment needs to be turned off. So this tank is a reef sys, and we have a freshwater or RO water reservoir in the back right hand corner, and that is where the ATO mechanism sits, feeding water into the sump proper as required to account for the loss of water through evaporation. Now that will definitely need to be turned off. So we'll turn that off. We'll also turn the skimmer off. But the only other thing that we'll need to turn off down here is going to be the return pump. But we'll start to take a little bit of water out of the system before we do that. So I'll turn these things off, and then we'll start our water change. So we've got our gravel vac, and we start it by just lifting it up and then down, keeping it vertical, and that will start our siphon. And I'm just going to do a quick small amount of gravel vacuuming by pushing the gravel vac down into the sand, and I'm starting and stopping the flow by squeezing the hose. Now, I say I'm only going to do a small amount because very soon our return pump is going to start sucking air and it will need to be turned off. But I'm going to take about 5 or 10 litres, 1 or 2 gallons sort of thing before we turn off the return pump. So we've still got water draining out from the tank into the bucket. We're almost at the point where we're going to stop it and start to refill, but I'm just going to quickly clean the protein skimmer cup, and I'm going to use this water just to save water and clean it in here. On the lid. So we're probably down in the tank, down about a third, which is where I want to leave it. So we'll go get our water sorted to fill the tank back up again. And I'll stop this. All right, let's fill our tank back up. So we have the luxury of natural seawater, and we've got 500 litres, so I guess that's 100 and something gallons in here. And we're just going to hook up one hose and we're going to go straight to the tank, no pumps. From the sump up into the tank. Now, whilst that's happening, I'm going to discard this water. so we've now filled the tank back up with natural seawater, but I have specifically left it a little bit low, and in the sump, there's probably, the sump's probably 2 inches, 5 centimeters below the automatic top-up sensor. And before we turn the automatic top-up back on, I'm going to just fill that last 5 or 10 litres with RO water because we had that high salinity reading before. So I'll put away the saltwater hose and I'll go get a bucket or a drum of RO water. So the salinity of or the specific gravity of the water of the tank was 1.028 before this water change. Our natural seawater is normally 1.026, 27. So with the water change and this additional RO going in, I'd like to bring it down to 1.026, and I think that's probably where it'll be at. And whilst we're at it, we can also just top up that RO reservoir in the back right-hand corner with our RO water. Okay, we're just about to hit the sensor. I'll go slightly above the sensor when I turn the skimmer back on. That'll also take a little bit of water. All right, so fill the reservoir at the back. So now I'm going to turn everything back on. So we've got the wave maker. I always like to check it's working, and it is. We have the chiller, which is turned back on, that's working, and the skimmer. It's always important to check that the skimmer isn't over skimming after a water change. Sometimes with all the particles in the water and the debris and such that's lifted up, you can find that you have that problem with it over skimming. So there's a couple of things that we're working on in this tank, and the first, you may have spotted it, is the bubble algae. And we've got 2 big patches on it, here and over here. And previously it was significantly worse, and we did a treatment of the continuum equation, and it worked really well, but it has just started to pop up a little bit. So we'll probably pull that out, or we might look at doing another treatment on the tank. And the other thing that we have in here, there's a couple of Aptasia. We recently put in 6 peppermint shrimp, and in a tank of this size, peppermint shrimp are a really effective control of Aptasia, so that won't be a problem very, very soon. But that's it for my algae clean. I've also sort of just fixed up the coral sand a little bit. You know, I've just sort of smoothed it out and built it up around the substrate dwelling corals. Now, this is one more thing I have to do, and that's clean the outside of the glass. So that's pretty much it for our service on Jelly Reef, and I just want to talk quickly about the things that we do differently with a nano tank as opposed to some of the bigger systems that we work on. And probably the main difference is that we control the bulk of the parameters through our water changes. Now, we did about a third water change today, and we do that sort of water change every 2 weeks. Now, typically on the bigger tanks, we don't do quite so much water changing, but with this tank, because there's no nutrient export system, such as a refugium or an algae reactor or that sort of thing, really the nutrients are controlled entirely through the water changing, as well as just having a balanced system, but also the calcium, KH and mag. We are, of course, dosing those into the tank, but we keep the stability by regular water changes. And given the size of the tank, that is quite an easy thing to do. But that's our episode of Gallery Aquatica TV for today. Hopefully you've learned a little something about servicing your nano tank. I'm Kevin the Fish Guy. Happy reefing. That's it for this week's episode of Gallery Aquatica TV. Don't forget to like and comment on all our videos and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned to Gallery Aquatica TV for more exciting episodes to come. I'm Kevin the Fish Guy. Happy reefing!